Good morning. We're going to go through two hands here. Both of these hands I call a pre-flop 2-bet and went to showdown with them. So this first hand is a 10NL table. It is folded to the low jack, who limps. All right, what is he going to limp with? Well, he's got a pretty wide range. He's 71-20. 9% 3-bet, so I don't think he's going to be raising with, or I think he would raise with aces, kings, queens, jacks, maybe something like that. You know, at least at a bare minimum, he was going to be raising those, but instead he's limping. We can look at his position stats to get a better idea, possibly, of what or how he plays. So at his position stats, he says 13% mid position, 27% EP. He's just very wide. He's playing a lot of hands. So with limping, let's go through and just kind of say he is all of these. Let's say all of the ace offsuits. Let's even throw in some of these. Forget that. I think if he raises, he's probably also raising king queen suited, maybe even king jack suited. I mean, with his pre-flop raises, I mean that right there is quite a few cards, kind of in line with pre-flop raise. Now again, I have 20%. And he may actually raise with even more. Maybe he raises with all of his pocket pairs. Maybe he raises with all of his suited broadways. I'm going to leave king jack, queen jack in there just to keep it wide. He may also have all the queen suiteds. So right now we're at 34.8%. I have the kings. I've got a king of hearts, king of clubs. So I'm well ahead of his range at this point. Somewhat interesting is that this villain 20 raises. Now, why would he raise? He may be raising to isolate this very loose villain. If we look at his pre-flop raise, he's pretty tight. I mean, 8%, 9% here. Raise first in, 10, 11%. I think he's going to have a pretty tight range here. So if we give him a range, let's say he's raising all of those. Let's say he is raising, ace jack, maybe like that. We'll say ace jack too, because again, he's the hijack position. He does play a lot of hands. What's his? When you look at his 3-bet blinds versus steal, he's got aces. His 3-bet range is kings plus 8, so probably 8s plus. If he's doing with the pocket pairs, probably also ace king at least. Call 2-bets. So he calls 3-bets in position with ace king, so maybe he doesn't. He's not going to 4-bet those. Called 3-bets out of position with pocket 10s. Limp and called the raise. You kind of get an idea that he would rather limp a much wider range than what he's raising. Right now we're at 5%. I have 148 hands on him. He's lost money right now, so maybe he's also going to do it with 10s and 9s, probably 8s maybe. Let's give him this range, something like that. That's 8%. Definitely, I think, a suitable range if he is planning to isolate, or if his plan was to isolate this player. So now it comes to me. Hold on. How does my kings fare? My kings actually do quite well against that. Again, 72%. Now this is a spot where I should just go ahead and 3-bet here. I'm 3-betting for value. I think both of these players have a wide range of hands that they would call. I mean, if you look at this player, his calling range, call 2-bet range is 39%. Call 2-bets from the blinds, all of the king suiteds. This, guys, his call 3-bet range, if you look at all of those, I can't get that to stay up, but his called 3-bets in position is ace king. Called 3-bets out of position is tens, ace 9 suited, ace queen offsuit. So I think if I raise, I think he's still going to be calling with his ace jack, king jack, queen jack, king queen. I think he's calling with his pocket pairs. I think there's a lot of cards that he's going to call. And I'm building a pot when I'm going to be ahead, and I'm going to be a solid favorite. I didn't do that, and I think that was a pretty big mistake on my part. I should have gone ahead and raised. I don't know what I was thinking, why I did that. But I just called, and I think that that's a mistake, because now that allows this player, this limper, to come in with his entire range, and I do kind of think he would. So I'm going to leave this entire range there, and we see a flop of ace of hearts, queen of hearts, and seven of clubs. Fortunately, I have the king of hearts, so if I am behind, I do have some backdoor potential. Against his entire range, I'm still ahead. Against this guy's range, I'm still going to be ahead. Not as much, 53%, because his range is more heavily skewed towards those aces than this player. This player has a bunch of these kings, queens, suited connectors, and one gappers, and so forth. So we have to start planning for the hand. We're against at least one loose opponent. I think villain 20 is going to be a tighter opponent. So what should we do? Well, if everyone checks, I think we should probably just check behind. We're either ahead and mostly way ahead of their range, or we're going to be way behind to the ace and drawing to either the one of the last two kings, or to running hearts, or possibly the running straight. I'll note that with the ace and the queen on board, and me having the king of hearts, really the only heart flush that we're looking at are going to be like the 10 jack 10 of hearts, 10 9 of hearts, jack 9 of hearts, maybe. So there's going to be very few flush draws out there, and believable flush draws. And of the flush draws, this player is going to be more likely to have them with these lower junky hands than this player, who was raising pretty tightly. So I just kind of think, like, I'm willing to risk that extra card, because I don't think an ace is going to fold to a bet. I just don't think that that's the case. Now, what happens if someone bets? I think we can call, because I think villain may c-bet a pretty wide range. His c-bet out of position's 100%. His c-bet in position's 100%. I bet he's going to be c-betting almost his entire range, and maybe it is his entire range. So what happens? He actually c-bets small, and I think that's pretty telling. I don't know why a set or two pair would bet that small, or even top pair. I just don't know why somebody like that would bet super small. So I think he's betting just basically no made hand, 70%, where against that range, I'm a huge favorite. I think that's the only thing that could explain it. He's taking a stab because he knows he should bet, but he doesn't really have a good hand, probably doesn't even have a good draw, so he's going to bet small. This guy calls, and I don't think that's as informative, because he may read this bet as being a weak play. I think he's going to call with his set, his two pair, his top pair, probably the pocket pair below, probably his middle pair. His weak pair would be all of the sevens. I think he's calling with all of those pair hands. He's calling with his flush draw. I think he's calling with a lot of those. Probably not two card backdoor flush, because he has to worry about what I'm going to do. And because he has to worry about that, maybe his weak pairs are going to come out. If you look at his weak pairs, we're talking 8s, 9s, 10s, and jacks. Maybe he just folds those because I may have the ace, I may have the queen. We always have that possibility. So I think for just one bet, he's probably going to call, especially if he has the heart. So if he has a 10 of hearts with his pocket tens, or the 9 of hearts with his pocket tens. So we'll leave that. So against that range, I'm still ahead. Not a huge favorite against that. And then it comes to me. And here, I think with that one bet, it was weak. I should have raised. I think if I raise, he folds, and it puts this guy to a test. I think if he calls, he has the ace. He probably has the ace or the heart flush. Um, so I think by just calling, I kind of set myself up into an even worse situation. Uh, Turn was a 7 of diamonds. 7 of diamonds really isn't going to change a whole lot, because there's no flush that is caught. There's no like straight that is caught. It's just paired the board. Still, if someone has an ace, I'm going to be way behind them. And I now lost my heart draw. So this player checks, and I think he took his stab. He stabbed at the pot early on, missed. So now, when he's checking, I think he is checking his no made hands. Probably, no flush draw. Maybe he has those. He's checking 60% of the time. His weak pairs probably checking. His middle pairs with the queen, I think he'll still probably check. He may call with those, but I'm going to take them out because I don't think he has the queen. I think a queen would have bet bigger as a c bet, instead of making that one big blind bet. So 80% of the time he checks. I'm 94% against him. This next player checks, and we have to consider, what is this next player going to check with. I think he's still going to check his draws and stuff, but I would expect full house to bet. Well, actually, no. I think a full house is going to check. He just hit it. He's got nothing to worry about. I think he's going to check here. Top pair, maybe. I think maybe, depending on how this player, he's loose. He's somewhat passive. I mean, 40%, but only raises 9%. Maybe he's scared of the top pair. So I think maybe 100% of his range, he's just going to check. He's just going to say, look, I've got an ace. I may be ahead. I'm willing to risk that heart to come out. This is when I woke up and said, I'm going to bet 9.6, big bets, big blinds. So that's like 2/3. I think this was overdue. This should have been on the flop. I raised, and he calls, and he folds. So this guy, if we can go back and say, okay, I think he's going to check his full house. He may check his two pairs, so this two pair would be like ace queens. But I kind of think he probably would have bet his top pair. I think he would have checked everything else. And then of the hands that call, it's going to be, I think his top pair is going to call probably a bet. His flush draw is going to call his open ended straight. His flush draw is going to call, and that's about it. Because I kind of think two pairs going to bet, even if, let's see here, those. So top pair plus, definitely, I think slow playing full house. So 50% of the time he would call. He didn't, so he folded. Get him out, but this guy calls. So why did he check, and what is he going to call with? So with him checking, I think maybe the middle pair check calls. So maybe the queen. Maybe slow played. I don't know. I don't think he's gonna just now call with no made hand. I think he's checking and calling with something, and that something may be a flush draw, could be the gut shot, could be one of these weak pairs. With the weak pairs, let's take out these small ones. Take those out and say maybe he would call with 8s, 9s, and 10s. But does that make sense? I don't know. With a player like this, being super loose, he could really have anything. So middle pair, weak pair, I'm still ahead. I should still be ahead. There is that possibility of 3 of a kind that he caught, and now he's just saying, I'm going to slow play this. So we'll leave the 3 of a kind there. Just as a possible slow play. And maybe it's better to set a percentage and say, you know, 60% of the time he'll slow play it. And against that range, I'm ahead because he still has some of these weaker stuff. Maybe the weaker pair isn't in there. So if we take out the weaker pair, you can see in the middle pair, you can see how the equity changes. Having these flush draws, I think still makes me a favorite uh, with this hand now that he's out. 9 hit the river, and now he bets pot. And the question is, what is he going to bet pot with? Uh, I think he's going to bet it probably with full house. He's 10 NL. Some players are going to bet big because they want to get paid off. Um, so maybe the full house. I think three of a kind bets. Would a top pair, good two pair? Would any of these other ones bet like that? No, probably not. Maybe he would take a stab at the pot with these weaker hands. So you can see that I'm going to be behind all of those. If he does the weaker pairs, so with the queens, I'm going to be ahead. And there's a lot of queens in there. If he does it with the weak pairs, I'm going to be ahead. So, as we add in his bluffing hands, I am going to be, favored, and I'm getting the odds to call. But how many people actually bet like that here? So they bet small, which I think is okay. It could be indicative of a 7. And then he checks when he hit trips and let me bet, and he calls. And then now that the heart didn't get there, now all of a sudden he bets the pot. I don't think players at this level bluff as much. Maybe at a higher limit, we have to call this because this could be a queen. But I think more stronger aces that are in there. I think I should just fold here and give him credit for having the 7, or for possibly having a pocket nines, and just filling up. So he bets. I called. I mean, I had to call so that we could see what he had. I don't like the call at all. And we see that he has ace 7. So he flopped 2 pair and filled up. So what did I have that in there? I didn't. I had pocket nines and I had 9-7. So, the question is, where did we go wrong with this assumption? I think we had all of this. We took out the top pair because we assumed he would have bet more. But now seeing his 2 pair hands, maybe that changes it. Maybe he has 2 pair and sets in that small bet. And with the top pair, maybe he would have bet larger. So once we have those, then the 7 of diamonds hits and he checks. Now we can set up saying, okay, quads and full house, he's going to slow play. I think with slow playing, probably not so much a 3 of a kind. I think he probably would have bet again, or at least check called. We'll say check called, and we'll take the filter out and say it's 100% check call no matter what. None of this other stuff. I think middle pair checks, but probably folds. Weak pair checks and folds based on his play. So we're still ahead, and then the 9 of clubs comes, and then he bets big. I think we're gonna be behind. I'm not sure if he bets big with that 7. With all 7s, maybe. So we kind of went off with that small bet. We assumed he would have bet larger with his top pair, 2 pair hands to kind of protect against that flush draw that's getting there, the straight draw. He didn't do that, so we can make a note, make mention that this guy is going to slow play. And by slow playing, he's not just going to check call, he'll bet actually really small to induce people to call. So not the greatest hand. I should have raised. I think if I raised pre-flop, he may have gone out, may have called. But, I mean, if he calls, great. Look what he's calling with. Build up a bigger pot. And we may have been destined to lose. Probably not. I think with that ace, I am concerned that either player that calls is going to be have an ace, and definitely once they call the flop or the turn, they have to have at least an eight ace or a seven. So that's hand number one. Didn't quite turn out as well as what I'd liked. Definitely made mistakes pre-flop. I think made mistakes on the flop, and then I shouldn't have paid him off on the river. So overall, I lost this hand, and I lost more money than I should have. All right, so let's get ready for number two. All right, hand number two, Ace Jack offsuit in the cutoff. So early position player raises, folds to me with Ace Jack offsuit. So let's think about what villain 12 is doing. He's 29, 24, 17. So I would consider this loose aggressive. He's got calling two bets of 8%, so is more likely to raise or three bet, raise, three bet, or fold than he is just to call. So he's definitely more of an aggressive player. How does he play positionally? So his position stats definitely plays tighter EP, 2 out of 18 hands, and then he loosens up MP in the cutoff, and it looks like the button he's playing a much wider range. So I think early position is going to have somewhat of a tighter range. I don't think I have any information on the player itself, and out of 127 hands, I think we can be reasonably certain he's going to be raising something at least sevens plus. He's probably raising these hands at 7.5%. Maybe he's going to do ace 10 as well. King Jack could be in his range, might not be. For this type of looser player, I would include King Jack, but I wouldn't include Ace Jack offsuit or King Queen offsuit. I think that's going to make his opening range way too wide, and he is somewhat tighter in early position. When you look at it's the session stats. When you look at his VPIP, it's still 11%. It's out of 18 hands. So, maybe he had one extra of these in that 18 hands, and that's kind of threw off the numbers. He may ultimately go down something like this, and possibly ace 2 to ace 5. For a loose aggressive player, this is definitely a possibility, and maybe even something like that. So includes these small suited aces, that's 13%. That is definitely within possibility of his range. And then it gets to me, and I'm saying, okay, against this range, how does ace jack offsuit do, especially from the cutoff? And you can see with my aces, if he has these in his hands, that ace jack does okay. But if he doesn't raise with these, then I'm kind of in the middle, not really at the bottom, just kind of in the middle of his range. And you can see against that entire range, I'm at 46%, which you could say it could be a call. I actually think it's better to be a fold because we're a little unsure on how tight he's going to be. So if we take out these small pocket pairs and do something like that, you can see my equity dropped. If he doesn't have these small suited aces, my equity drops even more. So I think it's okay just to fold this hand from the cutoff. The other thing we have to consider is that if I call, it incentivizes one of these other players to call, and then we would be taking ace jack offsuit to a three-way pot. Yeah, we'd be in position if we assume the button's going to fold, but I think it's best just to go ahead and say we're going to fold this hand, wait for a better situation. Now, ace jack suited's another story. We have the flush draw to go along with it, but ace jack offsuit's just not that good. Not that good a hand against an early position raiser. What about these two players? Do I think they would call if I called? The most likely one might be him. He calls two bets 20% of the time. That's 6 out of 30. He might be and he's getting somewhat of a discount. Not as big of a discount as him, but when you look at the big blind, he's only called the two bets 5%. Yeah, he's 22-20. He's in the big blind. Um, and let's see here. Ah, take off the session stats. Um, we can see. Come on, there it is. Uh, from the big blind, it's 19%, 15%. He's not calling overly wide. He's more calling more in the small blind than he is from the big blind. So uh, I don't think any of these players are really gonna call. I don't really think any of the players are gonna really three bet to try to squeeze. So um, I called again. I don't like the call. I think I'm near the bottom of his range, but I flopped Ace Jack, which is great hand for me. So you can say a bad call got bailed out by a good flop. So now we have to think about what we're going to do. And we should have been thinking about it. Because pre-flop, he c-bets 81%, and then on the turn, he c-bets only 17%. So I think maybe what I was thinking against this player was that we have such a large discrepancy in these numbers that I thought I can call with ace jack. If I don't hit an ace or if I don't hit a jack, I can watch to see what he does. I can call his c bet, and then if he checks the turn, I may be able to take it away with an ace high hand. That could have been a game plan. Is it suitable to do it with ace jack? Uh, with his looseness, maybe if he was in the cutoff or like a late middle position. Well, no, I'm in the cutoff. Maybe if he was in like this hijack position, it might have been a little bit better. But for him being in an early position, uh, I still just don't like the call. So now what happens? He checks to me, which we have to ask, what is he going to check with? Against this player, what is his C? His C bet's 81% overall. Out of position, his C bet's 50%. So I think he's probably gonna maybe C bet his sets. His top pair hands, probably not gonna C bet all of his top pair hands. So maybe C bet all of these ace littles. Um, maybe. Uh, but then maybe C bet his ace 10, but then maybe the king, ace queen, he's just going to check behind or check because he knows that he's got top kicker or second kicker, and he's not likely to be drawn out on, even with the heart flush that's out there or the draw. It's a small percentage. You can risk giving a free card, see what's going to happen. Um, so I think with the top pair hand, he's going to probably c bet his smaller top pairs and just take the pot. Um, but I think he's going to check, top pair, top kicker, and that means if he's going to check those, then we're going to have to find some other hands that he's going to be able to check. So we said, I think with the sets, he was going to bet. I think with his flush draw, he's going to bet. Is he going to bet with all of his flush draws? I don't think so. I think maybe the flush draws are going to be the check because the ace of hearts is on the board. Maybe the king. I'd say, you know, he would go for the checks with king queen and king jack of hearts. Uh, I'm actually going to take out the king jack of hearts because I think this king jack with the second pair is probably going to c bet, but the king queen of hearts, I think that's a good one to check uh, for the draw. Get the nut flush. Kind of gives me reason that if I have a heart and a heart comes on the turn, I may call one bet. Uh, See if I could get that heart. And with the king of hearts, he's got the nut. He has that nut heart. Pocket pair below top pair. I think he would probably c bet that. I think the middle pair he would probably c bet that. The weak pair, I think he's gonna check. No made hands, he's gonna check. We already discussed the flush draws. What about the gut shots draws? I think gut shots may bet here. Open-ended straight draw with that 9-10 may bet. So we're at like 67.8. going to take those out. Um, so 67.8, I think a good mix between top pair hands, weaker pairs, and draws. Um, he definitely has the ace in his hand. So against that, I'm at 87%. Um, I bet, and I think that's kind of what we should be doing with a hand this strong. So we want, I think a bet could be made. I think any jack, I'm going to bet. I think any ace, I'm going to bet. Any heart draw, I'm going to bet. Any something like, let's say Jack 10, Jack 9, Queen Jack. I don't even know if I have Jack 9. Queen Jack, King Jack's going to bet. And I'm betting those because I don't. If I get raised, I can dump it. I can give him credit for having a big hand, and maybe it's best for me to check a lot of my hands. But uh, I'm trying to be aggressive because I think I have a lot of hearts and a lot of straight draws here that I would have bet anyway. So I'm protecting those hands. Now, what is he going to call with? I think he's calling with all of these hands except the no mate hand. So the flush draw is the top pair, and I think since I bet half pot, he's probably going to call with a weak pair just once to see if he trips up. Maybe not all of them. So what we're going to do is take out like the twos, threes, fours, fives, sixes, and sevens. We're going to take those out. We're going to leave 8, 7, 9, 8, 9s, and 10s. We're going to leave all of those in there. So 28.7, I'm at 85% equity, and that is pretty good. All right, so I'm ahead. He calls, and I'm not too worried about the calls right now. Yeah, he could have pocket aces, he could have pocket jacks, but again, we've got ace and a jack on the board, and I have one in my hand, so there's only two combos of those. Could he have pocket eights? Oh yeah, definitely he could have pocket eights. I kind of thought he would have bet the set, c-bet the set, but maybe not, maybe not. So I'm going to leave that there. Turn comes the king of clubs. And he's going to check again. So now I kind of think that if he's going to check, since he checked once, check called, he's going to check his entire range. And it comes to me, what should I bet? Well, I think this hits a lot of hands. I'm thinking, does he have a queen 10? Probably not. I don't think he raised with a queen 10. Maybe queen 10 suited, but I didn't put queen 10 in suited in his opening range, so I don't think that hits. I think king jack maybe now hits, gives him two pair. I think any of that uh, king queen of hearts hits, so now he has second pair, gives him a reason to call one more time. He checks, I bet half pot again. I think I'm okay with that, because he could have still called with aces, and he calls. So now we have to think about what is he going to call. So I think top pair, two pair set, he's calling. I think the weak pair gives up, so the jacks, but not all of them. So whoops. So the weak pairs, the nines, I think now fold. The tens will call. The jack tens will call. And the queen jacks will call. So I've got those weak pairs, the jacks that are now calling, along with the flush draws, the open-ended straight draws, and the gut shots. I think those are all calling. Oops. We're gonna fix that. I didn't catch that. The nines are gonna call, because that's you can hit a 8, 9, 10 jack. No, nines won't call. Nines are done. Eights, nines are done. So the gut shots are those with the tens. So I think we've set up situations where he is going to call. He's got a pair. He's got the gut shot, and for half pot, I think he is going to call. So against that range, I'm still way ahead. Uh, and then this four diamonds hits, which should be great. And then all of a sudden, he bets 35. Now, in his mind, he could be thinking that I'm betting this heart draw, and maybe I had king jack, maybe I had king queen, maybe I had king 10. The question is, what is he going to bet, and what is he going to bet? Over bet the pot with. Uh, so in here, I think he's going to overbet his big hands. So he's got ace four. I have king jack in there. Uh, his top pair hands, probably not. I think two pair sets and so forth. I'm going to go back because I thought we had ace king. Oh yeah. So he checked. So I'm sorry. So at the beginning, this is where I was going wrong. We want to have him check call those hands, and he is c betting those hands. Check calling those hands. Uh, check calling. Yep, check calling. All right, that's better. I was wondering why I had those small hands, because once he gets there, then I'm thinking he's got his two pair. Could be ace king, could be king jack, uh, but I think with his two pair hands, I don't think king jack, because I could have ace queen, I could have queen 10. Um, I think king jack is more of a check calling range. Uh, or if he's trying to do a blocking bet, I don't think a blocking bet for 35 big bets into a 28.7 pot makes sense. So I think ace king's probably the most likely. Ace king set straights, and really it's just going to be that. So 22% of the time, I'm way behind. I have two pair. All of the flushes hit. I think just this, I have to give him credit. Maybe he had eights. I mean, that would have been an odd way to play the eights. Um, so with that bet that size, I know it feels tight. I think it's nitty. I think that you just have to fold. He's representing, pretty significant strength, and at 10 NL, you just don't see people bluffing. Uh, I called. He wins, and he showed pocket kings. So he hit the straight. So the question is, why don't I have pocket kings in his range? Where did we take it out? So we took it out actually on the flop. So we kind of assumed that his pocket pair below top pair would have bet. But maybe he checked here thinking because he was scared of the ace. And then he calls once because he doesn't believe that I have an ace. So once that happens, then I think the rest of his play kind of makes sense with the exception of the turn. So now I understand his flop. He was afraid of the ace, so he check calls because I could have had a wide range of hands. Then he hit trips. Now, why wouldn't he raise? Why wouldn't he check raise at that point? Because he just check called. I guess he's in his mind he's slow playing, and then once that four hit, he's saying, now I hit my set and I'm gonna bet big. I still think two pair ace king's gonna play the same way, and against those ranges again, I'm way behind. So second hand today, I just completely missed what he had in his hand, but I think the bet at the end was most revealing. He had a hand. He's saying he has a hand, and the most likely hand he's going to do that with would be two pair, ace king. Uh, because my calling range hits king jack. My calling range hits, has the queen 10 probably in it. Uh, Ace jack. I don't have ace king, so he's probably safe with that. Uh, but you know, would a player bet two pair like this? I've seen it, but I don't think it's super common. So unfortunately, I missed both of these hands. They're learning mistake. Maybe give them more credit when they check call, and then bomb the pot on the river. So watch out for that. When your opponents do that, especially at the micro stakes, they probably have a big hand. They probably have a big hand. Exception would be those players that are just maniacs. They're playing, 70%, 50%. Their raises are super. Their three bets are 20+%. Uh, they're just in their mind they're calling, 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 and then heart doesn't get there, so they just bomb it because they think that you might be on the heart. Um, but with how I'm betting, he has to give me credit for at least top pair. It doesn't make sense for him to bluff because if I miss the draw, I'm not going to call that. Um, so watch out for those bets. All right, these are two hands. This one ran a little long. Look tomorrow for two more hands.